Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations on Addiction, presented by Dream Life Recovery and facilitated by myself, Mary Fran Bontempo, and my friend and colleague, Diana Dubbs. We are two moms who have had different experiences in recovery. My son was addicted to alcohol and heroin for about 10 or so years, and Diana walked that path herself. So we're presenting this series through Dream Life in the hopes of helping people have these conversations about addiction. And Diana, you actually kind of took a poll among some people and found out that one of the things that people were really interested in was what? I'm going to turn this over to you.
So I took two different community polls and I asked some people what they would like to hear, just from different providers. And the biggest response that I got back was that they would love to learn more about how to communicate effectively with somebody who's fresh in recovery. I thought, what a great conversation to have, and especially between a mother who has put their child in treatment and somebody who has actually experienced what that looks like. How do we facilitate what that conversation looks like? Because there's two completely different perspectives that happen.
Totally different mindsets. I mean, the parents in one place and the person coming out of addiction is in a completely different place. And those relationships are fraught with tension to begin with. I mean, even in the best of circumstances, parent-child relationships can be dicey, but holy cow, when you have somebody coming out of treatment and a parent who's just had 30 days of peace and quiet, now what? Now what do you do?
Right. And I think looking back on it, being in that position, what we don't realize, and sorry, you have a naked baby behind you.
You deal with that.
Those are the joys of sobriety today.
That's it.
But I think being in that position, looking back on it now, what I see is parents who get, however long of peace. So we want to say essentially it's a 30-day package of peace, right? Their kid is safe. They get to sleep. They get to know that they're getting taken care of. They get the updates from the clinicians. They get that weekly conversation, hopefully. And then they come out. And it's like that fear and that dread and all of this stuff comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid comes out, or the husband or the wife or whoever it might be. And, we walk out like, okay, here we are, welcome to the world.
And I mean, I think there's certainly a well-deserved sort of sense of accomplishment from the person who has just undergone treatment, because clearly that's not an easy road. However, there's still all of that residual baggage that the loved one on the other end, sort of the receiving end of the addictive personality, how they have to deal with that, because it doesn't just disappear because all of a sudden somebody shows up and goes, hey, I went and got sober, and like, okay, well, now what do I do with all this stuff that I've been carrying around? So it's really challenging.
Well, yeah. And I think what ends up happening oftentimes is, it's kind of that, bringing the person coming out of treatment, making them right size again and saying, okay, great. Like, congratulations. We are super supportive of you that you're coming out of treatment and you've done all these really great things to better yourself. But let's remember what got you here,
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always easy for the family to do. And to be quite honest with you, I don't always believe that the addict or the alcoholic wants to hear it from the family, which is why we introduce the idea of a supportive recovery network or a program of recovery, so that we can work through those things and understand that, like, when we're coming out of treatment or we're coming into sobriety, we've done a lot of harms in the process.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons that got us here,
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing to recognize is that this is a very delicate time. And as much as you want to hear things from the person who was addicted, and I'm speaking as a parent now, as much as you want to hear the beating of the breast and the, oh, I'm sorry, and oh, I realized what I did, you kind of feel like you need to hear that, or maybe you deserve to hear that. I think it's important from the perspective of the person, not the addict, the other person, the loved one, you have to shelve that for a while. You have to recognize that this initial stage of sobriety is very fragile. And as hard as it is to put down your very well-deserved feelings of righteous indignation, like, what do you mean you're not going to apologize and beat your breast and wear a hair shirt for everything you did to me? You have to take that and you have to continue to play a supportive role. Not that not that it's all unicorns and rainbows, by no means. But I think if you're feeling those kinds of things, you have to find either a way to shelve them or an outlet for it that doesn't put that additional pressure on somebody just coming out of recovery, of a rehab.
Absolutely. So I can remember, being fresh out and, even like a month in, and I remember having all these things to fix because my world had blown up in a short period of time. And, I remember coming out and my parents like kind of throwing these things at me saying, okay, we have to do this and we have to do that. And I remember trying to like slow the process down and saying, I can only get one thing done. And, having that conversation and them saying, no, we got to get this done. We have to do this. We have to do this. And having to really break it down and say, remember what I just did. I have to do one thing at a time because I can't focus on more than that. Yeah. And I remember, I remember seeing the frustration in their eyes, because to them, I had done all this stuff to get to that point, to get treated, right. And in there, now I had all these things that I had to fix. And it was like, all right, come on, just get it over with, Yeah. I thank God for the patience to get it done. But I remember I can feel the frustration,
Yeah, well, there's a tendency, I think, from the part of the other person, not the person who is just going through recovery and all that, who's in the process of recovery. But there's an idea on the part of the other person that, okay, you're fixed now. Let's get all these messes that you made handled. And I think when you confront somebody new to recovery with all of the problems that they created, it's so overwhelming. It's very easy to be it might be a trigger for them to slide right back. So I think your point about one at a time, tackle one thing at a time is so important for people to understand.
Right. And that's not to say that we are not supposed to be responsible members of society and we are right. not supposed to fix our messes. Our jobs when we become sober is to learn how to clean up the wreckage of our past, but there's just a method to our madness, and in order to keep ourselves, on the right way, we have to do things in a certain order because otherwise, like, we just can't do things the way that a normal person can do them. Yeah. That my brain doesn't work the way that a normal person does. It was broke down to me very simply that a normal person's brain looks like this and my brain looks like this, and a normal person's decision goes all around in a circle and it's all connected, and mine has a big hole in the middle. And that's the difference between me and a normal person. And I can't make decisions on my own that makes sense.
Right. So let me ask you this question then. Having been through that, what would have been helpful for you to have heard? Is there something that someone could or should say? Just almost like I'm sort of big on, for lack of a better word, on a mantra or on a certain statement that, you kind of have to develop in your mind, and you use that just to get through a challenge. So is there something that someone could have said to you, or is there just a general guideline for a way somebody could speak to somebody who's addicted, so that you find that balance? Because that's what we're trying to strike here.
I think that, the one thing that I have developed over a period of time, had I learned it earlier on, is this idea of just pausing, yes. Just take a breath. Okay. And take a step back, and it's okay to do one thing at a time. And just, when we're able to read the room, so to speak, and feel feel the anxiety of other people and we can kind of pull ourselves back from that situation, it allows the other people in the room to de-escalate too, you know?
You know, that's perfect, because we're talking about talking, and maybe that's what we don't have to do. Maybe what we have to do is take that breath. And yeah, you want to build in opportunities for conversation, but not in these stressful periods. Like, you have to take your time with that.
I think the important thing for a family to know is that you don't need to know everything, you know?
Yeah.
Not every piece of information that your child or your loved one has been through is going to be vital to the family's recovery, you know, and it is innate as human beings. And now that I am a wife and now that I'm a mother, I experience it on a different level. I want to know everything, you know, but the simple fact of the matter is I don't need to know everything, because every detail is not going to, it's not going to define my well-being, you know?
Yeah.
And
so
go ahead.
So maybe that idea that you put out there of reading the room is something that we can incorporate from our end of it, meaning the person who is trying to figure out how to cope with someone who is new to recovery and new to sobriety. And maybe you allow time for conversation, but you don't insist on it. And that you make sure that maybe more than the conversation, the pause is there. So maybe that's the way to approach it.
I think the biggest thing for a family to know is, you know, less conversation is more sometimes in early recovery, and just letting your person in recovery know that you're supportive of them and that you're proud of them, even on the bad days, goes further than you will ever know. And also just letting them guide their own process, but also letting them know that you're holding them accountable, you know?
Yeah.
And letting them know that if your schedule is to go to a meeting, you know, 5 days a week, and you missed one of those meetings, hey, what's going on? How come you missed that meeting? You know? Because accountability is not a bad thing, and holding somebody accountable is not a bad thing, but also too, understanding that, you know, if we're having a bad day or we're off, you know, we're just learning how to live again. You know, we're learning how to communicate. When I came out of treatment, I was like a toddler learning how to live, you know, and that's the easiest way that I can put it.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, we want to see that continuous progress from our end of it. And I think there's that fear that the minute something doesn't go right, that, oh my gosh, they're going to relapse again. So it is hard for us not to feel that way. But I think those might be times for conversation where you go, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? But ask those questions in a supportive way, and in a way that, you know, you're not immediately being accusatory, even though that's a perfectly natural place to be. Like, I want to make it clear that nobody's feelings are wrong here. But because we're at opposite ends of the spectrum, it's really important to learn how to respect and communicate with one another. And yes, the accountability is essential, provided it's not done in an accusatory manner. It has to be done in a supportive way.
You know, today I wonder, you know, I have 2 kids of my own today, and they're very, very little. And I wonder, you know, how I will be if this ever happens to them, you know? And I know that I can do as much work as I possibly can, and I can be educated as possible. But when I put myself in that position, all of that goes out the window, you know? So understanding that there is no right or wrong answer. And, you know, as time goes on,
there they are.
Yep.
They're making their presence known.
As time goes on, everybody heals a little bit more, and the conversations get easier and easier, you know. But there are times, you know, I think I was, you know, 3 or 4 years sober, and my mom had asked me this question about, you know, what did I actually do in my active addiction? And I looked at her and I said, you don't need to know that. And she goes, yes, I do. I'm your mother. And I said, no, you don't. It's never going to make things better. And it was the first time that she ever just let the conversation drop. You know, she she just didn't continue the conversation because I think in that moment she realized that she didn't really want to know the answer to that question.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I think we still as the parent, we're the loved one, we're still always trying to figure out why. You have to get to a point where you understand, where you know you're not going to know the answer to that question. That's a question you have to put on a shelf. You're never going to understand why, because we don't have that mind of addiction, that mind of an addict. And consequently, the details of that are only going to be hurtful and upsetting. They serve no real purpose in helping anyone to heal and to get beyond it. So I think that you're, I don't know why my phone is going off there and making noises, but I think that you have your kids and I have my phone. I don't know what it's doing. So, but I think that the idea of finding that balance of respect for each party is really essential. So continue to keep the lines of communication open without forcing them. Be willing to take that pause. And as you so eloquently said, read the room. We have to understand to emotions are still running very high. We have to respect that in each other.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what's going on over there, but I'm sure something's about to burst, right?
Did you see my lips start to burst?
We're this close? Okay, so on that note, I think that we can actually wind this up, because I think we gave some people some really good tips on how to manage this, and to recognize again that this is a process that is unfolding. Be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and give yourselves the grace of that to figure it out.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think to understand what I realize now, and that I wish I knew then, is that, our parents, they do the best job that they can do with what they're given. And I don't think I truly realized that or recognized that until I became a mother myself, is that, I think that when we're children and we're addicts and we're going through it, we have this idealized vision of our family members or our loved ones, and we put them on these pedestals because we believe that they are this higher, elevated versions of themselves than they actually are.
Yeah.
Today, I'm able to see my family as just real human beings that were going through a really tough time and just didn't know how to handle it,
Yeah.
And they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah. And I think, and it's so valid, because these are such emotionally heavy situations, and nobody sees clearly through that. So the other thing that I would recommend is, by all means, reach out, contact people. I know the folks at Dream Life are there 24/7. I mean, if you have questions about this kind of thing, reach out. There's always someone there to help and to answer your questions and to guide you and to give you resources. So again, just thanks for being a part of this. I think these conversations are so important, and I'm so happy to be doing them with you. And thanks again to Dream Life Recovery for presenting these episodes.
Absolutely. And please email us if there's something that you want to talk to us about. I think we're going to flash a way to contact us.
Yeah. Well, what is that email address? Just tell everybody so that they can reach you.
Message me at diana.dubs@dreamliferecovery.com. If there's something that you would like us to hit on, we'd be glad to. If you'd like to suggest a guest for us to speak with, if you'd like to be a guest, we'd love to talk to you. I think this is a great way for us to involve a lot of people, because we can't do this alone. And we firmly believe that the more people we have in our arsenal, the more ability we have to fight this.
Absolutely. So thanks again for joining us, and we will see you very soon for another episode of Conversations on Addiction presented by Dream Life Recovery. Thank you.